Okay, question 13. The big question of the beginning of the Maimed is, why Machzas Shekel needs Moshe Rabbeinu? That's the question. Why Machzas Shekel needs Moshe Rabbeinu? And the basic point, of course, is Moshe Rabbeinu is very important. Moshe Rabbeinu is very, very important. But you don't say that to put on tefillin you need Moshe Rabbeinu, to keep Shabbos you need Moshe Rabbeinu. Why, when it comes to Machzas Shekel, is there a need for the idea of Nasi Hador, Moshe Rabbeinu? That's the big question of the Sikh. Okay, question 14. In order to explain this, we must first discuss what? Moshe Rabbeinu. Before you talk about Moshe Rabbeinu's connection to Machzas Shekel, explain Moshe Rabbeinu. And this is where we're doing. We're starting Perek Gimel. We're jumping, in other words. And Perek Gimel is the discussion on Moshe Rabbeinu, which is going to go for a bunch of pages. And when we finish those pages, we'll go back and look at the Machzas Shekel. What is the first idea and meaning of Ra'imah? The first idea and meaning of Ra'imah means that a shepherd does his job well. That's what it means. The Eibishter gives Moshe Rabbeinu a job, and he does it so well that Moshe is even ready to argue with the Eibishter about his job. Now, I gave you yesterday the example of the Egel, but another great example in the Chumash. After the story of Korach, Yidden are dying. So Moshe Rabbeinu tells Aaron HaKohen, take Titus and go and stand in the camp, because the Malach HaMavos was killing people, and the Lashon and Rashi is Kol Eis Yeruach, who just kept on killing. And the Aaron gets in the middle of the camp with the pan of potatoes outside the Beis HaMikdash against all the rules, not like Nadav and Avihu, and he grabs hold of the Malach HaMavos and let him go. And the Malach HaMavos said, excuse me, I got work to do. And the Kohen says, I also got work to do. He said, what's your job? My job is to stop you. He says, I work for God. Who do you work for? He says, I work for God's servant. So the Malach HaMavos says, in other words, I'm equal to your boss. I work for your boss's boss. I work for Moshe Rabbeinu's boss. And you got to let me do my job. And Aaron Kohen says, excuse me, Moshe Rabbeinu told me to stop you. I'm going to stop you. And the Malach HaMavos says, you go tell Moshe Rabbeinu to get out of the way. Moshe was given a job by the Eibishter. I was given a job by the Eibishter. I got to do my job. So Aaron Kohen says to the Malach HaMavos, I know my boss. I know him. If he didn't hear it from his boss, he wouldn't have told it to me. So Take, you work for my boss's boss. You work for the Eibishter, and I quote only work for Moshe Rabbeinu, but Moshe Rabbeinu would not tell me something. The Eibishter didn't say it. So the Aaron Kester Ramach was come. Let's go meet my boss and your boss. So they come Pesach Hayom. Moshe Rabbeinu is there, and Koyachol the Eibishter is there, and there's a conversation. The Malach HaMavos says to the Eibishter, I don't understand. You gave me a job. He's your subordinate. How does he stop me? And the Eibishter said that's his job. So I don't understand. You give out conflicting jobs? you cross the wires? They say, yeah, that's what I do. That's what I do. I gave you one job. I gave him the opposite job. And you killed a bunch of people. That's where it stops, because he's got to do his job. That's Moshe Rabbeinu's job. He's a trusted shepherd. He does his job well. He's dedicated to the people. I think I mentioned in an earlier class that there's a note from the Rebbe, which the Rebbe wrote in conjunction with Parshas Hasfarim, Chabisha B'Tevis, that for some reason the Rebbe had to put on paper his job description. So the Rebbe writes, my first responsibility is to be a dugma chai to other people, how they should serve Hashem to the best of their abilities. And encourage them to learn, to daven, to be frum, and so on. And then it says, then after that begins my work as an individual person. It's really disturbing when you read it. Because the Rebbe is saying straight out, before I have to think about me, I have to think about you. That's how you define an Ayimah. What the Rebbe calls an Ish Kloli. You have a look at the Siches in Chelik Yud Ches about the Friedrich Rebbe, where the Rebbe says that the Friedrich Rebbe's life was spreading Yiddishkeit. The Friedrich Rebbe's life was not his own Shabbos and Kosher and Mikvah and Film. It was other people's. And if he couldn't be mashpeh in other people, he didn't have a purpose to live. Because that's what a Rebbe is. His mitzias is first of all klal, and second of all prat. So this is the first definition of Moshe Rabbeinu. Question 16. Moshe does his job with so much rota that he even defies who? The Eibishter.
This was a pretty late question.
Huh? Well, now that I presented it, yes. 17. Which story that supports this? So yesterday I told you the Maisa Egel. Today I told you the Maisa of the Malach HaMavos. But there's more than one story. There's more than two stories where Moshe Rabbeinu stands up for the Yidden Krayachol against the Eibishter. He says, Eibishter, this is what you told me to do, and I got to do it. You know, you want to have a Maisa listed on the other side of the coin. And I guess you could bring this as a raya. It's the story about Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu Navi is Pinchas. You know that. Pinchas is Eliyahu, right? The Rebbe once had the Sikha that it shouldn't say Pinchas Eliyahu. It should say Eliyahu is a Pinchas. Pinchas was before, Eliyahu was after. So the Rebbe says first Eliyahu Navi was a Malach. Then he came down as a person called Pinchas. Then he came down a second time as a person called Eliyahu. So Pinchas Eliyahu. First it was Eliyahu a Malach. Then he was Pinchas. And then he was Eliyahu Navi. So Pinchas' trademark is kanos. Pinchas created kanos means when he sees something wrong, he can't stand by and watch. He has to stand up and protest, even if he has to kill Nasi Yisrael. He kills Imri. But Kana is cannot. He's a zealot. He was a hot-blooded guy. He couldn't stand watching Achil Hashem and let it be. So in Tanakh, Pinchas is Kana Kenesi. That's Lashon Kana Kenesi. I'm jealous. I'm angry. I'm protesting the Avodah Zarah that happened. They killed all the Nevi'im. Izevel and Achav killed all the Nevi Hashem. Hundreds of people, murdered them all. And Evadia hit 50 in one cave, 50 in another cave. That's a whole other story. But they killed all the Nevi'im. Pinchas remains alone, and he's really, really angry. And he tells the Eibush that Kana Kenesi B'Shem Elokei Yisrael, I'm a jealous zealot. I'm the only guy standing up for the Eibush. I'm not afraid to say what has to be said, even if it costs me my life. And he says to the Eibush that the Jews are in bad shape. And one of the statements that he makes is B'risai Hafaru. They desecrate his covenant. Yeah, they desecrate his covenant. And Bepashtus, it means Bris Milah. So it says in Helikus Svarim that the Eibush says to Eliyahu Navi, Yidden were made for Bris. You're going to have to show up at every Bris and be a witness that they're keeping the Bris. And that's the reason Eliyahu Navi shows up at every Bris, because he spoke Lashon Hara, the Yidden don't keep it. In other words, you want to say the Avodah Zarah, that's a fact. You want to say that they killed the Vin, that's a fact. But don't say Bris Ne'afara. Which is the Eibush telling Eliyahu Navi, you're supposed to be their advocate. You're supposed to be their lawyer. I'm supposed to criticize them. You're supposed to defend them. What's it you're criticizing them? And you have in Rashi also, I remember learning this Rashi as a little kid and thinking, wow, how sweet that is. It's a really, really weird Rashi. Yidden made the egel. Yidden made the egel. Yidden made the egel. And of course Moshe was very upset. He was very disappointed. He broke the luchas. Then he had to be the Eibush shouldn't wipe the Jewish people out. Then he got the second set of luchas. He finally comes down the mountain after 120 days, 3 times 40 according to Rashi and Chumash. Yeah, and he gives the instruction to build the Mishkan, and he moves out of the camp. Moshe Rabbeinu moves out of the camp. He's their Rebbe. He's in charge. He saved them from certain death. Eibush was going to kill them all. Moshe negotiated for them. But Moshe says, I'm going to live next to these chazerim. So he moves his tent away from all the other people, and he names it Oyhel Moyed. That's the source. The Mishkan is called Oyhel Moyed. The Mishkan was built after, because Moshe moves his tent out of the camp, separates the Jewish people, and he says, you want Mavakish Hashem, you're interested in something real, come to me. So Moshe's house became 770. It was Oyhel Moyed. It was removed from the rest of the Jewish people. And then the pasuk says, so Moshe not like Moshe lakach hayol. This is about Tisa. He took his tent. He separated from the camp. Harchek men amachan, a whole tchum Shabbos, 2,000 amas, maybe minus an inch, so they could walk to him on Shabbos to be shalom from going over to the tchum. If you were interested in the Eibush, instead of being interested in the Narishkeit, the Yidden showed themselves to be interested in Yotza Oyel Meid. You would go out to Oyel Meid and Moshe would speak to you. And then it says, Hashem speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu, and then Moshe Rabbeinu goes out and he speaks to the Jewish people. So Rashi says a funny thing. The Eibush says to Moshe, I'm angry. I'm like the Rabbi used to say, I'm officially angry. And what did you do? After spending 120 days with me on the mountain, negotiating for them, you're finally back in the camp and you go live in a different neighborhood. Like imagine the Rebbe moving to Flatbush. So Hashem says to Moshe, Ani merachkam, v'ata merachkam, mi yakarvam. There's such a Rashi. Can someone bring me a Chumash of Achit? Isn't that amazing words? Huh? Ani merachkam. I'm pushing the Yidden away. I need... And you're... So the Eibush says to Moshe, someone's got to be on their team. That's a Mishnah Torah. I want you... Isn't that amazing? Did you know there's such a Rashi? I mean, we learn Chitas every year, but you don't always pay attention. And you could read the Rashi, understand the Rashi, and miss the implication. Hashem says to Moshe, someone's got to stand for them. The Eibush created the world. The Eibishter wants to destroy the Yidden. Moshe doesn't let him. And after Moshe doesn't let him, Moshe says, but you know what? Arm's distance. They're minor kinder, but they smell like you know what, so I'm staying away. And the Eibishter says those words. Now, I just want you to read the words of the Rashi. I learned that as a child in Cheder, probably in 4th grade, but I was in 4th grade when I was 8. Not like today. Probably in 4th grade, maybe in 5th grade. It's Pasuk Yud Aleph, Kapitel Lamed Gimel Pasuk Yud Aleph. Oh, V'diber Hashem el Moshe. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Sheyoshuv el Hamachane, go back to the camp. Omale, he tells him, Ani bekas, I'm angry. V'ata bekas, and you're angry. Im kein mi yekarim. Someone's got to be nice to them. Stel sich vor. It's like good cop, bad cop. The Eibishter is so upset. He wants to destroy the Jewish people, but they're still his people. So he says to Moshe, there's a reason I put you on their team. I didn't put you on their team that you should fight for me. I put you on their team that you should fight for them. I'll do my fighting all by my lonesome. And that's a third raya, Shimshon Agib. The Lashon of Rashi is, Ani bekas v'ata bekas mi yekarim. I'm angry, you angry, mi yekarim. Okay, next question. What is the second definition of Raya Mehem? The second definition of Raya Mehem means he shepherds faith. Emunah, he shepherds faith. Shepherds faith doesn't mean he gives us faith. It means the faith we have, he strengthens. As I'm going to explain to you momentarily. Question 19. What makes this especially the Rebbe's job? The answer to that question is that the Rebbe is a neshama Jew. A neshama Yid. Meaning, the Rebbe doesn't only use his 5 senses and his faculties of mind and heart. Meaning to say, you have a Gadol B'Yisrael, the biggest Talmid Chacham. His ability to inspire, to influence, to lead is based on his intelligence. And as Yiddish Maimon say, it's an amazing thing. A Rebbe has a 6th sense. A Rebbe is a Yid who's in touch with his neshama to such an extent that through his neshama he feels other Yidden's neshamas at a different thing altogether. And you can't compare the two. And that's what tzaddikim are. That's what the Rebbe's are. That's the Baal Shem Tov brought into the world. The Rebbe is a neshama Yid. He feels all Yidden from the inside. I'm sure you've heard the story where the Rebbe once told somebody that every neshama that comes into this world, every neshama that leaves this world, passes through this room. That's not a big Talmid Chacham. That's a whole nother situation. And Moshe Rabbeinu's role is to connect Yid and Eibishter based on the neshama. This is why he's called Raya Mehem, the shepherd of faith. He shepherds our faith, not because he gives speeches. He shepherds our faith because he can touch our faith in our soul. And question 20, what story did I tell you? To illustrate this, it's not such a perfect story, but it makes the point that the Rebbe was in Germany, in Würzburg, and a Rav walked into him, the Rebbe Rashab. It's in Germany. It's a city in Germany. And he was writing, and this Rav asked the Rebbe Rashab if he could look at what he was writing, and the Rebbe Rashab said yes. He walked behind the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab was writing a tshuva in Nigla, and they had a conversation about it. The following year, the Rebbe Rashab was again in Würzburg. This Rav again walked into him, and this Rav was again writing. The Rebbe Rashab was again writing. But this time he went over to the Rebbe Rashab without asking permission. And the Rebbe Rashab was writing the Maimon from Samach Vav about Malachim and Neshamas. So this Germanic Rav, who was a very big Talmid Chacham, but Pnimis HaTorah was not his business, jumps back and he says, ha! Mit Neshamas and Malachim, you're busy with the souls and the angels. That's the role of a Rebbe. A Rebbe's distinction is that he has a connection to Neshamas on a Neshama level and he operates from there. Okay? So Moirai V'Raboisai, we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu's role is to strengthen faith.
What page?
Page Chav Ches. Page Chav Ches, Sif Gimel. We'll start from the beginning again. Let's see, we got a whole 18 minutes. Ulahavin Shayches Inyan Zeh LeMoshe. I should have twice Chai. To explain the relationship between Machtas HaShekel and Moshe Rabbeinu, we have to explain first the idea, Raya Mehem Nedavke, that Moshe Rabbeinu, first of all, is the trustworthy shepherd, and second of all, he is the shepherd of faith.
Did you skip?
Yes, I didn't start from the beginning. Yes, I did skip. Asher lo yinem, but he was told, Ki sisas reish v'geim ezayit nu v'geim machtas HaShekel, that for some reason, Machtas HaShekel requires Moshe Rabbeinu. The Rebbe wants to know why of all mitzvahs in the Torah, Machtas HaShekel requires Moshe Rabbeinu, and to answer this question, the Rebbe says, let's talk about Moshe Rabbeinu. Hine ma shemoishe nikra raya mehem. Now Moshe Rabbeinu is called the trusted shepherd, but he's also called the shepherd of faith. I was born in 1965. My earliest memories of 770, probably when I was around 5 years old, in the 1970, 71. Very, very vague early memories of 770. Okay, but I certainly was not around when the Rebbe became Rebbe. But I've heard from people who are older than me, people older than my father to be sure, so this one's right, that before the Rebbe was Rebbe, when the Frierdiker was alive, he verbrengt the Rebbe. And then in that intermittent year between when the Frierdiker passed away and the Rebbe was Makif the Makif officially, the Rebbe verbrengt a lot. He verbrengt much more in the middle year than before and after. The Rebbe, in the middle year, when it wasn't official yet, the Rebbe verbrengt a lot. Because he was not acting as a Rebbe, he was acting as an Edom, as a son-in-law. And the Rebbe's Verbrengens were very boring. He had one message. Mamish, one message. Hiskashrus, Hiskashrus, Hiskashrus. Rebbe, 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 Rebbe. That's all he talked about. Rebbe, 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 Rebbe. It was radical. And you must understand that we are now that way. Because of him. But if you go back in the tradition of Chabad in early generations, they didn't talk about Rebbe, they talked about Avodah. Davening, learning, meditation. The Rebbe, our Rebbe, talked about one thing. Rebbe, Rebbe, that's all he talked about. Rebbe, 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 Rebbe. Now we could lump this, we could pontificate, we could philosophize, we could do whatever it is we want to do and try to say why. But this is the Matiyas Advarim. The Rebbe, but he was still an Edom before the Frierdiker passed away. Always, always. And certainly during that middle year when there was the Rebbe Kvayachal was officially not the Rebbe. And even afterwards, but afterwards, of course, it would change a little bit, was obsessed with the idea of Nesidereinu, the Rebbe. Everything is about 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 the Rebbe. So now let me go off on a very, very thin branch from which I could fall and hurt myself and make a statement. You could say, I mean, the Rebbe spoke about the Rebbe because he knew that he needed to talk about the Rebbe, but why? You could say, perhaps, that because that's where the Rebbe was. The Rebbe's whole life, the Rebbe was a serious Jew, you know that? The Rebbe was born a baby, but he wasn't a regular baby, clearly, and he wasn't raised like a regular child, he wasn't raised in a regular home, he was a Superman, the Rebbe's a Gazlon. But in the Rebbe's life, he was born into the Leivik's house. And the Leivik was chassid of the Rebbe Rashab, whom the Rebbe never met. Then when the Rebbe was 20 years old, he went on to meet the Frierdiker Rebbe and to become involved with the Frierdiker Rebbe. I don't know which happened first. He married the Frierdiker Rebbe's daughter, became the Frierdiker Rebbe's chassid, or became the Frierdiker Rebbe's chassid and married the Frierdiker Rebbe's daughter. But you have to assume that the Rebbe went through a process of accepting the Frierdiker Rebbe as his Rebbe, and what's more important is giving himself the Frierdiker Rebbe as a chassid. The Rebbe is a giant. Big people have a harder time doing things than little people do. But the Rebbe understood very, very deeply that Hiskashrus is a sacred thing. It's not belonging to a political party. The Rebbe understood that the highest level of serving the Eibishter is by being connected to your Rebbe, because like it says in Tanya and in so many other places, the Rebbe connects you to the Eibishter, Hashem connects to the Eibishter, and the more you connect to your Rebbe, the more you connect to the Eibishter. And the Rebbe, I'm saying this a little bit, it's wrong to say, but it's my feeling. The Rebbe himself lived there, and that's what he talked about. The ultimate, you want to serve Hashem, you want to be El Chayid, be Makusha to your Rebbe. Why? Because that's how you connect to Hashem. And by the Rebbe, it was bligvul. I feel that the Rebbe himself reached a point in his own Metzias where the only thing that mattered to him was the Rebbe, and this is what he should have said. You gotta be Makusha to the Rebbe. You have to be connected to the Rebbe. And there's a great story to support this. I've told you the story once before, but now's the time to tell it again. It's a wonderful story. There was a Yid. Now, I was not in 770 when this story was told. One day I'll probably get hold of the video and I'll see it myself. But I think I know who that man is. 770 used to make big fabrengens when I was growing up in the 80s as a bocher. On special occasions. Rosh Chodesh Kislev was a big fabrengen. Yotis Kislev, Yutshvat, and the big fabrengen meant they put up a dais, either in the back of the shul where the Rebbe's balcony is now, or on the side of the shul. A bunch of old people would sit. And the whole crowd would come. They put out tables. They put out food, more food, less food, better food, depending on the occasion. And people came. The show was full. And they had speakers. One speaker, second speaker, third speaker. Different speakers, good speakers. Chassidische Yidden. And I always say most of these speakers got up unprepared and they said the same thing. Rabbi Yankel Hecht, J.J. Hecht, when he spoke at those big meetings, always came prepared.
Who's the one who's not alive anymore?
Who?
One of the speakers, like YY style, but password all that.
I don't know, Zalman Posner? I don't know. I'm talking about El Tarid Mashpiyim, yeah? So a man gets up in 770. This man is probably today over 100. If I know who it is. And he tells a story. He was connected to the Frierdiker Rebbe. He was in 770 in the 40s. A very special man, very learned, very pious, very righteous, very good. And the Frierdiker Rebbe called him in. And the Frierdiker Rebbe sent him on a shlichus, told him to do something for spreading Yiddishkeit in America. Whatever, it's to start a school, to be Arav, I don't know what it was.
Gordon.
Huh?
Gordon.
Yisrael.
Yisrael, what's his name? The speaker.
The speaker, which, I don't know. Yisrael Gordon, Shalom Gordon, I don't know. So, he says to the Frierdiker Rebbe the following words. Was will ich haben for them? How is it going to benefit me? And the Frierdiker Rebbe opened up his eyes, took a look at the guy like fire, zapped him through and through, and didn't say a word. That was like the end. I don't know if he went on that shlichus or he blew it. But the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't answer him. He just looked at him and burnt a hole through his head. So this man gets up in 770 and tells the story. Now why did he do that? Because that's how he was raised by his teachers. This is what we call in our condescension, Daira Shishi. The sixth generation. Chabad was always, this is a bad word, but it is quite true. Chabad was always a selfish chassidus. My chassidus is how I get closer to the Eibishter, how I daven better, how I learn more, how I refine my character, how I deal with my yetzer hara. It was all about self-improvement, growth.
Did it benefit him to say it at the speech? To say that speech at Cincinnati?
He was making a point. Let me finish his speech. So he says, I went to Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe gave me a shlichus. It was here in America, and I took the Frierdiker Rebbe, and again, I'm assuming that his mashpiyim told him that your avodah, even when you're doing something for the Rebbe, is supposed to help you beruchnius. By you going on a shlichus, you grow beruchnius. So he says to the Frierdiker Rebbe, well, how's it going to happen for me? The Rebbe didn't answer him. Just looked at him and burnt a hole through his head. I don't know what the end of that story was, and I don't care. But then the man continues, Chaim. And he says, it was a big admission. For a person to come to 770 and say, you know, I was in the Rebbe's room and act like a dunce. That's what he said. But then he continues, he says, by this Rebbe, I wouldn't even think to ask that question. I wouldn't even think, I wouldn't even think to ask that question. Meaning, it was so clear by this Rebbe that when you're given a job, you do it, no questions asked. I wouldn't even think to ask that question. But the Frierdiker Rebbe, it was still close enough to the Rebbe Rashab and the Rebbe Marash and the Tzemach Tzedek, where you can say to the Rebbe, you know, Mosei Eseg Amanoichi Levesi, my own Yiddishkeit. He says, by this Rebbe, whatever you're told to do, you got to do. It's a revolution in Chabad that has a pnimi component. In other words, it's not just only revolution in the sense that there's a different mission. It's a revolution because it defines Chassidus differently. What is the ultimate Chassid? The ultimate Chassid is the person that's the highest Avaz Hashem and Yiras Hashem. The ultimate Chassid is the one who understands the most Chassidus. The ultimate Chassid wants the most Vekas Nelikus. The answer to the question, the ultimate Chassid is the one who's the most connected to his Rebbe. And in his connection to his Rebbe, he has a connection to Atmos Samhus. I want you to know that's why the Hillel Paracher is special amongst that ilk of great Chassidim. Because from what I understand, the Hillel Paracher, more than others, was a very great person. But his Hiskashrus, his loyalty to the Tzemach Tzedek and to the Mittel Rebbe was without any limits. There's a certain, somebody Hillel Paracher had a spark. Our generation, we were raised on one thing, you had to do what you're told. And the Rebbe, when he first became a Rebbe, it's all he talked about. It's all he talked about. Hiskashrus, Moshe Rabbeinu. So you could say, if you wanted to be a cynic, well, the Rebbe needed work to get done. He wanted us to do it, so we had to brainwash and to listen to whatever he says. So this was the propaganda. But that's so silly and it's so wrong. The Rebbe said only what he believed. And the Rebbe, and again, I'm saying these very bad words, the Rebbe came to believe from his own avodah, which he then transmitted to us. If you want to be connected to the Eibishter, you do what the Rebbe says. The Nesiah Hador connects us to Atzvah Samhus Ein Sof Baruch Hu. That's Moshe Rabbeinu's role. And that's how the Rebbe taught us how to be Yidden. The Rebbe's instructions to us are not just what we need to do for him. The Rebbe's instructions for us, what we need to do, so we should be connected to the Eibush. Because when you're connected to Moshe Rabbeinu, you're connected. When you're connected to your boss, you're connected to your boss's boss. Like Moshe Rabbeinu told us, Balach. And that's what this Maimed is presenting. Moshe Rabbeinu connects Yidden to Atzmas Amuz. And the specific point of this Maimed is, I'm reading it inside now, Roya es ha'emunah, he shepherds faith, v'zon u'mefarnes oise. He nourishes it and he provides it to parnasa for us. Okay? Now Roya means he's a shepherd. Zon means he gives bread and water. Parnasa means he gives other things. In halacha, in a ksuba, you have mezenis and parnasa. Mezenis means they give you food and drink. Parnasa means they have to give you clothing, they have to give you shelter, they have to give you pocket money, they have to give you jewelry and makeup. That's parnasa. So there's a difference in halacha between mezenis and parnasa. It's really a lashon hazayah that says both things. Yitzan v'yisfanis b'ni al yadach. This Maimer is very connected to the Vata Tetzaveh, and I said to you the other day, the Rebbe's first Maimer at Vata Tetzaveh and the Rebbe's most recent Maimer at Vata Tetzaveh. This Maimer, which is the fourth Maimer the Rebbe ever said, is very, very similar to the last Maimer the Rebbe ever gave us so far. It's the same Maimer. That Moshe Rabbeinu's role is that he gives Yidden Emunah on a level of Azenus and Panas. What's the key? The key is Emunah, you don't have a Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the key. Emunah you have from Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu is called the first believer. There's a pasuk in Tanakh someplace. Churi l'reish amana. Churi means a matana, like a chura, to give it a chazanah. L'reish amana. So the Medrash says, chura me'reish l'ma'aminim. There's a gift that every Jew gets from the first believer. The first believer is Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu's emunah has no limits. And by the way, in this Maimer, the big issue, and I prepared the Maimer yesterday, and I'm struggling to understand it, but the Rebbe talks about the difference between the Emunah of a Yid and the Emunah of a Goy. Avraham Avinu did not have the Emunah of a Yid, he had the Emunah of a Goy. But he became a Yid. What's the difference between the Emunah of a Yid and the Emunah of a Goy? We're going to see it in the Maimer, but the difference in the Goy's Emunah is based on his learning. He studies God, he understands God, and he has to have a leap of faith. Avraham Avinu was a Goy before he was a Yid. And Avraham Avinu developed a relationship with Eibush using his own mind. And then at some point, hit the law of Baal Abira, Avraham Avinu became a Yid. And his emunah changed. And instead of his emunah coming from his mind, his emunah came from his soul. We're called Ma'aminim B'nei Ma'aminim. We're called believers, the children of believers. And our being Ma'aminim B'nei Ma'aminim has to do with Avraham Avinu. We all inherit emunah from Avraham Avinu. Every one of us because of Avraham Avinu. So if Avraham Avinu, and by the way you understand that is, of course we all have a neshama, a pinta l'yid, a chelik l'kam mima'al mamish. That pinta l'yid, that neshama, is the source of our emunah. Our connection to Hashem is from the inside, from our pinta l'yid. That comes from Avraham Avinu. So why that Moshe Rabbeinu? Because the emunah that we have from Avraham Avinu is not enough. If a person believes in Hashem, it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to do what Hashem says. To be properly connected to Hashem, your emunah has to translate into a way of life. And this is Moshe Rabbeinu's role. Let's read it inside. Ki emunah mitzad atzma, emunah by itself, yechoyla liyes b'derech makif. It could be in a form which is called indirect. Indirect means hidden. Kemaimed, as the Gemara says, Ganva, a thief, apum machtarta, on the opening of the tunnel, Rachamon Akarya calls to God. You're talking about a man who digs a tunnel on another person's house to break and enter, and he's prepared to steal. If you wake up in the middle of the night, the Gemara says, he'll kill you. Which is why the halach is, if you wake up in the middle of the night, you find the guy in your house, shoot first, ask questions later. Ein loy damim, because he's considered if he's in your house, he's prepared to kill you. So kill him first, huh?
Unless it's your father.
Unless it's your father. Right. Correct. So you're talking about a man whose hypocrisy goes for sure to the level of theft and possibly to the level of murder. What's he davening for? He davens to the Eibush, and the Eibush should help. And I told you this in the previous class. This is the Gemara in Masechta Berachos, as it says in footnote He said 20. But if you look at footnote 20, you'll see that it's not in the printed Gemara, so you're not going to find it. It's in the Gemara according to the gears of the Ein Yankov. I once looked Ein Yankov up, and it's a bit disappointing. I didn't read it too clearly, but the quote, as we have the Hasidus, is much more powerful than the way it's written in the Gemara. A thief is ready to steal and ready to kill. He prays to Hashem. Why? He believes in Hashem enough to know that Hashem can help him, but he doesn't believe in Hashem that much that he therefore has to listen to him. Or to say it in different words, he doesn't believe in Hashem that if he'll do what Hashem says, it'll be his best. You want a panasa? Listen to the Eibishter. He says, no, I want a panasa, but the Eibishter's not going to give me out to steal it. So he davens to the Eibishter to help him have panasa, and he's approaching his panasa in a way which is precisely against what the Eibishter said. And he reads it inside. The af shehu ganov, you're dealing with a man who's a thief. And what's a thief? Shegaru afilu mi Gazlon. A thief is worse than a robber.
Gazlon means robber.
A Ganov, I don't know what Ganov. Ganov means a violent criminal. Ganov means a person who walks up to you in the street and Gazlon, and he grabs something out of your hand. A Ganov is devious. He's hiding. Why? He's hiding because he's more afraid of you than he's afraid of the Eibush. The halacha is a Gazlon pays once, and if he swears falsely, he pays once and a quarter, 25% more. A Ganov, if he swears falsely, pays twice, because a Ganov is considered worse than a Gazlon. Favos. So the Ganov is afraid of the Eibush, is afraid of people, not the Eibush. The Gazlon's afraid of anybody. I find it interesting. I find, you know what, because the worst thing is a violent criminal. And a Gazlon is a violent criminal. A Ganov is devious. And in halacha, in American law, violent crime is the worst thing because it destroys the community. It pushes people can't live.
Actually, non-violent crimes, which is stealing from the government, is the worst crime, but after that, sure.
By American law?
American law, tax evasion is probably one of the worst things you can do.
It's the most punishable things. I don't know. But violent crime. But the Torah is saying a Gazlon, he's a violent criminal. He stops you in the street and smashes you and then takes your wallet. A Ganov is considered worse, which is fascinating. Why? The Gemara says, why is the Torah more machmir about a Ganov than a Gazlon? In other words, a Ganov pays double if he swears. If he doesn't swear, he doesn't pay double. And a Gazlon pays only once and a quarter. The answer is, Zeh hishvit kveid eved lekveid koinai. This one treats the Eibishter like it treats people. The Eibishter's honor and people's honor is the same. I'm not afraid of the Eibishter. I'm not afraid of people. V'zeh, and the Ganov loy hishvit kveid eved lekveid koinai. He doesn't honor the slave like he honors the Eibishter. Meaning, parenthesis, shekibed ha'eved, he has more respect for the slave. Yesem mikoine, more respect than he has for the master. He's more afraid of people than is of the Eibishter. Shu yarem ibnei adam, he's afraid of people. Ume'inyan shel mayla loy nizar. And for the Eibishter, he's not afraid. Kum taisa, that a Ganov is a person who, to use the language that we used in the introduction for the class, he has guilt, he has no shame. He has no conscience. He doesn't want to get caught. He doesn't want to look bad. But the Eibishter, who cares about the Eibishter? So the Rebbe says, Hainu, this means second life at the bottom of the page. This person is such a compromised situation. He has to use, what's that guy's name? What's the guy's name? Ben Shapiro. He has guilt. Yareb is afraid of people. He has no shame.
What did Ben Shapiro have to do with that?
Oh, you came late. I played a clip before, which I thought was wonderful, where he says guilt is from other people, shame is from the Eibush. And he says in this little talk that people have to go away from guilt towards shame, meaning we do the right thing and not the wrong thing, not because we don't want to get caught, but because of the Eibush. I think it's so wise. A Ganov has no shame, as only he's not afraid of the Eibush people, right? This kind of guy who has no sense of conscience comes to the Eibishter. Rachamon Kari davens to Hashem, the Af, She'esa Hepech Rotzen Al on top of page Chavtas, he does against Eibishter's wishes. Harei Mavakesh Meshem Yisbarach, he asks Hashem, She'atzliche Be'inyan Zed, that he should help him to do something which is Hepech Rotzen. This is a Ganov. So the person is davening. If he davening, he believes in God. I mean, the best example of Ganov, is the mafia. They're very religious. And they're evil. And they tzelem zech upright and center. When a guy dies, they make a big levaya and they have tzelem. They're religious. I don't get it. They have an explanation. They understand it. They have a whole explanation how it works. But the religious, the Eibusha said you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to kill, you're not allowed to steal. Don't tell me what the Eibusha said.
The honesty.
That's not the honesty. This is organized crime. It's not even making a living. It's about being rich. It's about being rich at other people's expense. It's really sick. It's really sick, especially today. In other words, if you understood the mafia in the 1920s in the streets of New York, it made sense. Everyone was very, very poor. No one had anything. So they were hurting each other. But when these people were second generation Americans, third, enough. You know, now go get a normal job. You were an immigrant, you couldn't make a living, you were underclass. Stop it. You know, with a culture of dishonesty and theft and violence. And he davens. That's why you need Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is to destroy the mafia. Okay, I'm going to let you go.